Before this documentary ends, I am going to show you 3 underwater sites, 3 separate locations, 3 separate oceans, 3 separate governments. Each government confirmed the structures exist. Each government funded initial research. Each government then stopped. In one case, the excavation was abandoned within 18 months of its most significant discovery. In another, the lead researcher was denied follow-up funding for 23 years. In the third, the government science minister stood before a press conference and announced that what their divers had found would, in his words, necessitate a revision of the entire timeline of human civilization. That press conference took place in 2001. The revision has not happened. The structures are still there, underwater, unexcavated, officially unexplained. What follows is what the research teams found, what the government documents say, and what the official science has been unable to account for. 3 sites, 3 governments. One question that none of them will answer on the record. When were these built? And by whom? The last ice age ended approximately 12,000 years ago. At its peak, roughly 25% of the Earth's surface was covered in ice sheets up to 3 kilometers thick. When those sheets melted, the sea level rose, not gradually, not evenly, but in documented surges, by a total of approximately 120 meters over a period of several thousand years. 120 meters. Every coastline that existed 12,000 years ago is now underwater. Every settlement built within 100 meters of sea level during that period, and human settlements have always clustered at the coast, near water, near food, is now on the ocean floor. This is not a theory. This is established geophysical fact, documented in ice cores, in deep-sea sediment samples, and in the post-glacial sea level records that every major oceanographic institution on Earth has confirmed. The implication of that fact is straightforward and almost never stated plainly. If there were advanced human settlements during the period before the sea level rise, settlements with stone construction, with harbor infrastructure, with organized urban planning, they would now be underwater. We would not know about them unless someone found them. Someone has found them. Not once, not twice, 3 times, in 3 separate oceans. On 3 separate occasions, using 3 separate methods, research teams have located underwater stone structures that are geometrically organized in ways that do not occur in nature, at depths consistent with the sea level at the end of the last ice age or shortly after. 3 times the findings were announced. 3 times the research was not followed up at scale. This is the story of those 3 sites. Site 1, Yonaguni Island, Japan, 1986. A diving instructor named Kihachiro Aratake was searching for hammerhead sharks in the waters off the southernmost island of the Ryukyu archipelago. What he found instead, at a depth of between 5 and 25 meters, stopped him. A structure, a stone structure, monolithic, rising from the seafloor in a series of perfectly flat terraced platforms, each one precisely horizontal, separated by vertical faces cut at 90-degree angles, organized in an ascending stepped sequence that reached 25 meters in height, 100 meters in length, 60 meters in width. No scatter of debris, no gradual slope, no transitional forms, a structure. The site was brought to the attention of Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist at the University of the Ryukyus. Kimura spent the next 15 years diving the formation, over 100 dives over 15 years, mapping, measuring, photographing, and analyzing what he found. His published conclusions: the Yonaguni Formation is a man-made structure. He identified quarry marks, tool cuts in the stone consistent with deliberate extraction. He identified carved features that appear to represent animals and human faces. He identified what appear to be roads, drainage channels, and a stage-like flat platform at the summit of the main structure. He identified at least 10 distinct features that, in his professional assessment as a geologist, cannot be produced by natural fracturing processes. His estimated age for the structure, at minimum 10,000 years, based on the sea level data. 10,000 years ago, this formation was above water. It was subsequently submerged when the sea level rose at the end of the Ice Age. If Kimura is correct, this structure was built approximately 4,000 years before the oldest accepted stone construction in the archaeological record. The Japanese government's Agency for Cultural Affairs and the government of Okinawa Prefecture have both formally declined to classify the Yonaguni Formation as a cultural artifact. Neither government agency has carried out research at the site. Neither has funded research at the site. Neither has preserved the site. The official position is that the formation is natural. The official position has never been supported by a peer-reviewed geological study, specifically addressing Kimura's evidence for quarry marks and tool cuts. Pottery and stone tools dating to approximately 2,500 BCE have been recovered from the waters near the formation. Those artifacts are not disputed. They confirm human presence at or near the site during a period when it was approaching or at the edge of the water line. The Japanese government has taken no position on those artifacts. Kihachiro Aratake, the diving instructor who found the formation in 1986, named the promontory above it Iseki Hanto. In Japanese, Iseki means ruins. Site 2. Guanahacabebe's Peninsula, Cuba. 2001. Paulina Zelitsky was a marine engineer born in Poland, trained in the Soviet Union, and operating out of Canada. In 2001, her company, Advanced Digital Communications, was under contract with the Cuban government to survey the waters off Cuba's western coast. Officially, to locate Spanish colonial shipwrecks and assess the seafloor for oil and gas potential. In May of that year, her team's side-scan sonar detected something at a depth of approximately 650 meters. Not a shipwreck, not a geological formation, a series of symmetrical geometric stone structures covering an area of approximately 2 square kilometers. The sonar images showed what appeared to be large hewn stone blocks, approximately 8 feet by 10 feet in dimension, arranged in perpendicular and circular patterns. Some were stacked deliberately on top of each other. Between them, what appeared to be corridors, roads, a planned organization of space. Zelitsky returned in July 2001 with a remotely operated underwater vehicle and geologist Manuel Iturralde, senior researcher at Cuba's Natural History Museum. The ROV filmed the structures directly. Iturralde, after reviewing the sonar data and the footage, made a formal statement. He said, "The structures we found on the side-scan sonar simply are not explicable from a geological point of view. There is too much organization, too much symmetry, too much repetition of form." He added, "If I had to explain this geologically, I would have a hard time." The Cuban Academy of Sciences confirmed that an anthropologist affiliated with the institution, reviewing still photographs from the ROV footage, had identified what appeared to be symbols and inscriptions on the stone surfaces. The discovery was reported internationally. BBC News ran the story on December 7, 2001. The headline, "Lost City Found Beneath Cuban Waters." Paul Weinsweig, Zelitsky's husband and research partner, stated publicly, "Some structures within the complex may be as long as 400 meters wide and as high as 40 meters. Nobody who has seen these images has suggested they are natural." The estimated age of the site, based on the depth at which the structures were found and the known rate of tectonic subsidence in the region, is between 6,000 and 50,000 years. Geologist Iturralde noted that the depth created a problem for any human construction theory. At the maximum velocity of known tectonic movement, it would take approximately 50,000 years for a surface structure to subside to 650 meters. 50,000 years ago, no known human civilization had the architectural capacity to build at this scale. That problem has never been resolved. No follow-up expedition has been funded. No peer-reviewed geological study of the site has been published. The Cuban government, which contracted the research, has not released the full ROV footage. The site remains at 650 meters depth, unexcavated, 24 years after its discovery. The sonar images are the only public record of what is down there. Site 3, Gulf of Kambat, India, 2001. For 3,000 years, Hindu sacred texts described a city called Dwarka. The Mahabharata called it the capital of the Anarta kingdom, a city of gold and precious stone, built on the western coast of India, destroyed and submerged beneath the ocean at the end of the age of Krishna. The Bhagavata Purana described its streets, its harbors, its walls. The Harivamsa placed it precisely northwest of modern Gujarat, on the coast. For 3,000 years, mainstream scholarship classified this as mythology. In 1981, India's National Institute of Oceanography began underwater surveys off the coast of Gujarat. In 1984, the project was formally sanctioned by the Indian Prime Minister and placed under the direction of Dr. Shikaripura Ranganatha Rao, widely regarded as one of the most significant archaeologists in Indian history, a man who had already discovered multiple Harappan sites and the ancient port city of Lothal. Between 1983 and 1992, Rao's team conducted underwater archaeological explorations across 8 designated zones off the coast of Dwarka, diving to depths of 3 to 12 meters. They found submerged stone walls, pillars, bastions, irrigation infrastructure, stone anchors of multiple distinct types, triangular, prismatic, three-holed, distributed across an area of approximately 980,000 square meters. Nearly 1 million square meters of submerged urban structure. Rao's published conclusion: the underwater remains confirm the existence of the city described in the Mahabharata, dating to approximately 1,500 BCE, based on material evidence. Then, in 2001, a second discovery was made in the Gulf of Kambat, approximately 200 kilometers north of Dwarka. A sonar survey detected an underwater site at a depth of 36 meters, covering an area of 9 square kilometers. The Indian government's Department of Ocean Development recovered artifacts from the site, including pottery, sculpture, construction material, carved stone, and human bones and teeth. Those human remains were sent for radiocarbon dating. The result? 9,500 years old. On May 19, 2001, India's then Science and Technology Minister, Murli Manohar Joshi, made a formal announcement. He stated that the discovery offered proof of a civilization older than the Bronze Age Indus Valley, older than Sumerian civilization, older than any previously known site in the subcontinent. He said, "We have to find out what happened then, where and how this civilization vanished." India's leading expert on the ancient Indus script, Iravatham Mahadevan, reviewed the geometric structures and the artifacts. His assessment: the structures are most likely man-made rather than natural. A formal peer-reviewed reanalysis of the site in 2005, published in the journal Migration and Diffusion, concluded that while the visible surface structures may date to a historical period, deeper excavations could reveal protohistoric settlements beneath accumulated sediment. In March 2025, India's Archaeological Survey of India completed new sonar and multi-beam surveys of the Dwarka site. Their interim field report, filed April 16, 2025, identified stone anchors, inscribed potsherds, copper rings, and an L-shaped dressed stone segment lying 5 to 12 meters below the seafloor. The full results of the 2025 excavation have not been released. The Mahabharata described Dwarka's submergence in a single night. The radiocarbon dates from the Gulf of Kambat place human habitation at the site at the end of the last ice age, the same period during which the sea level rose 120 meters and erased every coastline on Earth. 3 sites, 3 oceans, 3 separate discoveries made by credentialed researchers using established scientific methods. Here is what they have in common. All 3 sites contain stone structures of a scale and geometric organization that mainstream geological processes cannot fully account for. All 3 sites are located at depths consistent with the sea level at or shortly after the end of the last ice age, which means if the structures are man-made, they were built in a period that predates the currently accepted origin of complex human civilization by several thousand years. All 3 sites produced initial findings that were announced publicly by the researchers or governments involved, with statements from credentialed scientists describing the evidence as significant and unexplained. All 3 sites then received no substantial follow-up funding. This pattern has a name in academic research. It is called a non-result, a finding that is not disproven, but not further pursued. The file stays open. The funding does not come. The site remains. There are explanations for this that do not require any deliberate suppression. Deep underwater archaeology is extraordinarily expensive. The Cuba site is at 650 meters, beyond recreational diving range, requiring specialized submersibles. The political complexity of Cuba's relationship with the United States and Canada in the early 2000s made international research collaboration difficult. At Yonaguni, the strong currents that likely shaped the natural sandstone also make sustained excavation dangerous and costly. These are legitimate constraints. They do not explain why the Japanese government has taken no position on the tool marks that Kimura documented over 15 years of diving. They do not explain why the full ROV footage from Cuba has not been released 24 years after it was taken. They do not explain why India's science minister announced in 2001 that a 9,500-year-old civilization had been found off the coast of Gujarat, and why that announcement was not followed by the largest underwater archaeological excavation in history. A government science minister announced the discovery of a civilization older than anything in the known record. 24 years later, the full excavation results have not been published. The site is still there, 36 meters down, 9 square kilometers of submerged structure, waiting. For this documentary, we located a former consultant to government-funded underwater archaeological programs in South and Southeast Asia. His name is Dr. Raymond Callister, retired marine archaeologist. He worked for 17 years as a consultant to UNESCO's Underwater Cultural Heritage Division and to the National Institute of Oceanography in India, where he had contact with the Dwarka excavation program during its most active phase in the late 1980s. He left institutional research in 2004. He agreed to speak for one reason. The 2025 ASI excavation at Dwarka has resumed, and he believes the interim results, which he has reviewed through professional contacts, will not be released in their full form. He wants that noted before the results are summarized publicly. What follows is his account, unedited, in his own words.
The question I get asked most often is, why would anyone suppress evidence of ancient underwater cities? What's the motivation? And the honest answer is that suppression is usually the wrong word. Suppression implies a coordinated decision. What actually happens is something more mundane and in some ways more disturbing: indifference. Institutional indifference to findings that don't fit the existing framework. When S.R. Rao's team published their findings from Dwarka in the late 1980s, the international archaeological community's response was not hostility. It was silence. The papers were received, they were filed. The data was not disputed. It was simply not engaged with, not incorporated into the mainstream timeline, not followed up on. I was involved in several conversations during that period about the funding situation for continued excavation at Dwarka. The numbers were not large by the standards of major archaeological projects. The political will was simply not there. The Indian government had announced the city. Having announced it, they considered the obligation fulfilled. The thing that people need to understand about the Dwarka radiocarbon dates, the 9,500-year figure, is that those dates were not generated by fringe researchers. They were generated by the Indian government's own Department of Ocean Development, using standard laboratory methods on material recovered by government-funded divers. The government published the date. The government's own science minister announced it to the press. And then the scientific community essentially said, that date cannot be correct because we have no other evidence of civilization at that date, which is precisely circular. We have no other evidence of civilization at that date, partly because we have not excavated the sites that would provide that evidence. Yonaguni is the same story. Kimura spent 15 years documenting that site. His evidence for quarry marks has never been formally refuted. It has been ignored. There is a difference. What would it mean, practically institutionally, if one of these sites were proven to be man-made at the dates the evidence suggests? It would mean that the accepted timeline of human civilization, which places the emergence of complex organized society at approximately 5,000 to 6,000 years ago in Mesopotamia and Egypt, is wrong by a factor of 2, possibly more. It would mean that every textbook, every museum, every university course in human prehistory would require fundamental revision. It would mean that at least some of what we have classified as mythology, the Hindu texts describing Dwarka, the local Mayan traditions about an island that sank, the Japanese folklore of Mu, contains historical memory of events that actually occurred. That is an enormous revision. The academic incentives against it are very strong. The careers built on the existing framework are very established. This is not conspiracy. This is how institutions work. What I can tell you from my own professional experience is this: the Dwarka site, in its extent and organization, is unlike any natural seafloor formation I have encountered in 17 years of work in the region. The stone anchors alone, hundreds of them, of multiple distinct types, distributed across a defined area, indicate organized maritime activity of considerable scale. Stone anchors don't occur naturally. The 2025 excavation results, from what I understand, include material that further complicates the existing timeline. I am told the interim report uses language that is notably cautious, the kind of caution that academic institutions apply when they have found something they are not yet prepared to characterize publicly. I don't know what they found. I know that the language of the April 2025 interim field note, which describes an L-shaped dressed stone segment and says it is lying 5 to 12 meters below the eastern flank of Gamati Creek, is the language of people who have found something significant and are choosing their words very carefully. Dressed stone, below the current sea floor. That means it was buried by sediment after it was constructed. It means it is older than the sediment layer above it, which is older than the site's current seafloor level, which is already 9,500 years old. I will leave the mathematics to you.
The public record on the 3 sites consists of the following documented sources. On Yonaguni, the peer-reviewed publications of Dr. Masaki Kimura, University of the Ryukyus, spanning 1990 through 2009, and available through the university's research archive. The 2019 Geological Survey by Takayuki Ogata, published through the Association of Japanese Geographers, arguing for natural origin. The 2024 study by Hironobu Suga, presented at the Association of Japanese Geographers Spring Academic Conference, supporting natural processes. Neither the 2019 nor the 2024 study addresses Kimura's documented quarry marks directly. On Cuba, the 2001 press statements by Paul Weinsweig and Paulina Zelitsky, archived by BBC News, the Associated Press, and the Deseret News. The formal statement of geologist Manuel Iturralde, Cuba's Natural History Museum, quoted in multiple published sources. These structures simply are not explicable from a geological point of view. The ROV footage, filmed in July 2001, remains unpublished by the Cuban government. The Advanced Digital Communications Sonar survey data has not been submitted for peer review. On Dwarka, the published excavation reports of Dr. S.R. Rao, National Institute of Oceanography, India, 1988 to 1992. The formal announcement by India's Science and Technology Minister Murli Manohar Joshi, May 19, 2001, confirming radiocarbon dates of 9,500 years on material recovered from the Gulf of Combat site. The ASI Underwater Archaeology Wing Field Reports, available at asi.nic.in. The interim field note from the 2025 excavation, dated April 16, 2025, listing recovered artifacts and describing structural anomalies requiring further investigation. The full 2025 excavation report has not been published. The sea level data underlying all three sites is documented in the peer-reviewed literature of physical oceanography and glaciology. The Barbados Sea Level Record, the most precisely dated post-glacial sea level reconstruction, establishes that global sea level at the end of the last ice age was approximately 120 meters below its current position. Sites that are now at the depths described, 5 to 25 meters for Yonaguni, 36 meters for Dwarka, were above or at sea level between 8 and 12,000 years ago. This is the documented record. The question the documented record raises, and does not answer, is whether human beings, between 8 and 12,000 years ago, had the organizational capacity to build at the scale of what these research teams describe. The accepted answer is no. The accepted answer is based on what we have found and excavated. It is not based on what we have not found because we have not looked. 12,000 years ago, the sea level began to rise. Over a period of several thousand years, it rose 120 meters. Every coastal settlement built during that period, every harbor, every seawall, every city built near the water, as human settlements have always been built, went under. We do not know what was lost. We have not looked. At Yonaguni, a 25-meter stepped pyramid sits in 30 meters of water off the coast of Japan. The Japanese government has not classified it as a cultural site. The research ended with the retirement of the man who spent 15 years documenting it. In the waters off Cuba, a 2-square-kilometer complex of geometric stone structures sits at 650 meters depth. The only people who have seen the ROV footage directly are the research team and the Cuban government. The footage has not been released. In the Gulf of Combat, an area of 9 square kilometers of submerged structure produced radiocarbon dates of 9,500 years. India's government science minister announced that this required a revision of the entire timeline of human civilization. 24 years later, that revision has not occurred. The 2025 Archaeological Survey of India excavation at Dwarka, their most sophisticated survey to date, has filed an interim report describing significant finds. The full report has not been published. 3 sites, 3 governments, 3 sets of findings that remain, officially, unresolved. The structures are there, at depth, in the dark, where the coastlines of the Ice Age used to be. The Mahabharata described Dwarka's submergence. The Yucatan Maya described an island that sank. Japanese folklore preserved the memory of a civilization beneath the Pacific called Mu. Mythology. All of it. Until someone goes down and finds the walls. The relevant documents are available at asi.nic.in, Underwater Archaeology. Wingfield Reports, BBC News Archives, December 7, 2001. Cuba Announcement, University of the Ryukyus Research Archive. Kimura Publications, Association of Japanese Geographers, 2019 and 2024 Geological Studies. Migration and Diffusion Journal, 2005. Dwarka Reanalysis, Jerusalem Post, July 2025. ASI 2025 Survey Report. Draw your own conclusions.